Welcome to The Criminologist, the podcast dedicated to educating and entertaining our listeners. We bring you subject matter experts from around the world and share the latest and greatest evidence-based practices and interventions to help individuals desist from a life of crime and delinquency. This podcast avoids stereotypes and biases in favor of the lived experiences of those we can best learn from. Now, please welcome the host of The Criminologist, Joseph Arvidsson.
Hello, and welcome to episode 119 of The Criminologist Podcast. Happy to have you all with us today. Grab your listener passports, my friends, for we are going international once again today, taking you to the land of the Carpathian Mountains and the Black Sea. The name of this nation comes from the Latin word Romanus, which means citizens of the Roman Empire. Their capital city of Bucharest is also known as Little Paris. I had the good fortune of meeting our next guest last year when she and I were part of a team of international trainers lending their skills to Professor Ion Dernescu's International Training School on Core Correctional Skills in Barcelona, Spain. I am absolutely delighted to be reconnecting with my friend and training colleague, Iuliana Carbunaru, joining us all the way from Romania. Iuliana Carbunaru is the probation inspector for the Romanian National Probation Directorate. She is also, as you are all about to hear, a board member for the Confederation of European Probation, also known as CEP. I love meeting fellow evidence-based practices champions from around the globe to learn from them and add to my own social capital, which we know is so important in the development and growth process. Which is why it was great to reconnect with Iuliana. Please sit back and enjoy my interview with Iuliana Carbunaru, and I will see you all on the other side. Well, welcome to the show, Iuliana. First of all, great seeing you again. Why don't we start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself and, generally speaking, a little bit about your background, perhaps some educational and professional highlights to kick us off, and then we'll do a deep dive on some of these great topics.
Great to see you, Joe. Happy to see you again after such a long time, actually.
Exactly.
Since Barcelona last year. So about myself, some background elements. My background is in social work. I graduated social work more than 20 years ago, and immediately after that, I've been recruited for the newly established probation service in my country, Romania. Because comparing with other countries in Europe and comparing with you in the US, in this region here, probation didn't exist since 20 years ago. So yes, I have been privileged to contribute to the establishment of probation in my country together with a fantastic team of colleagues here. So mainly, I have dedicated my whole professional life so far for the criminal justice area of work. Yeah, so this is me, let's say, in only one line.
I'm kind of the same way. We read that research about when you go to school, go to college, and the probability of people changing careers so many times in their life. But I'm like you. I got into the criminal justice field, and I've not deviated from that pathway. And speaking of which, you mentioned you're in Romania. You have been with the Romanian Ministry of Justice since 2006. Now you're the probation inspector for the Romanian Ministry of Justice. Just perhaps share with our listeners what probation supervision looks like in Romania currently.
Yeah, you're right. Currently, I am probation inspector in the Central Department of Probation. Even before that, I joined the service as a probation officer. I mean, I work with convicted person, and after that, become probation inspector. So if we are talking about probation supervision in Romania, actually probation supervision is similar and different in the same time as in other jurisdictions in Europe, and not only. Because the probation supervision is similar as it is imposed, let's say, by the court, according to the court decision, but in the same time is different because supervision must be adapted to the risk and needs of the convicted person, and in order to have an effective practice, I would say. But if we'll speak in general, let's say the supervision, the length of the supervision can vary in our country between 2 years and maximum 4 years.
Maximum 4 years, to be clear.
Maximum 4 years supervision. And during this probation term, during this supervision term, there are some mandatory obligations, like any other mandatory obligations in other countries, and some optional obligations imposed by the court, like following treatment programs, doing community work, performing drug and alcohol treatment, this kind of obligation to support the resocialization of the convicted person. So this will be, let's say, in general, how the probation supervision will look like. But if our listener would like to hear more about us and how the probation is run in my country, we at the European Organization of Probation, we have a special section on our website called A Day in a Life of a Probation Officer. And our listener can check the website and the section, and they can see experiences from other colleagues from Europe and the experiences from my colleagues here in Romania. They can read more about our probation work.
That is fantastic that you mentioned that. I have seen A Day in the Life before as part of the larger package of information that I'm always reviewing, that I am receiving from the Confederation of European Probation, which reminds me, share with our listeners over here, particularly in America, what the Confederation of European Probation, or CEP, is all about. We have an agency, a professional agency over here in America known as APPA, American Probation and Parole Association. But again, I know I've experienced some of the great work of CEP. Can you maybe talk about what they're all about, first in your role as a board member, and then, again, what that looks like as far as what their work throughout Europe is all about?
Yes, you've mentioned the work of APA. Also here in Europe, we are familiar with your professional organization. We can see CEP, a Confederation of European Probation here in Europe, as our professional organization in Europe. We are gathering 60 members from Europe, 60 jurisdictions. That means we can have members from probation organizations, ministries of justice, or from academic institutions, but we allow also individual members to join our organization. And indeed, since 2016, I am a board member of the Confederation of European Probation, because in the board of the CEP, we are encouraging the attendance of colleagues from various jurisdictions, from north of Europe to south of Europe, from east to west, and from Central Europe, in order to have a better representation of our members. Mainly similar like APA, we are uniting professionals under the umbrella of the CEP. We are giving them a platform, a forum for discussions, an environment where to share practices, where to meet, where to change ideas, and to influence transfers of best practices across Europe. And yes, CEP, it is also connected with other international organizations like APA, of course, like ICPA, like Council of Europe, or European Commission. CEP is actually the voice of probation in Europe on the global arena of criminal justice, I would say. So I'm honored and happy to be part of the board. And this year we'll have the General Assembly in Dubrovnik, Croatia. I hope I will see many colleagues from Europe there.
I hope so. And I know they do great work. I encourage all of my listeners, particularly those of you in Europe, if you have not already, to check that out. You mentioned you and I met last year in Barcelona. This was part of the International Training School on Core Correctional Skills. We were a team of trainers over there. And again, we got to meet. What are some themes that you've experienced as far as training and facilitating evidence-based practices to professionals from other countries and indeed from other cultures?
Indeed, Joe, we've met in Barcelona last year, and I think we created together a learning environment for colleagues around Europe. And we had a fantastic group of trainees and a brilliant lineup of trainers. You've been one of them, and we are
Thank you.
Grateful for that. As I consider myself a problem-solving oriented person, one of the theme of the training school was about problem solving. So this was allocated to me, and I was happy to deliver it together with Professor Ioan Durnescu during our training school. So beside problem solving, I'm very close to motivational interviewing, pro-social modeling, and I had the chance to deliver this area of training to colleagues from other jurisdictions here in the region, because beside my full-time job at the Ministry of Justice at the NPD, I'm also privileged to work for the Council of Europe from time to time, and sometimes I'm delivering training in these areas of practice, or I'm supporting colleagues from other jurisdictions to establish their own probation services in the region here in Europe.
I often tell people that was, for me at least, a career highlight, just meeting not just great trainers like you, but as you noted, motivated learners from jurisdictions whose probation services were still relatively new and just thirsty for that knowledge around evidence-based practices. And then to your point, seeing some of those same themes around motivational interviewing, risk need, problem solving, pro-social modeling. It was really encouraging to see that this is a global phenomenon and that we're all on the same page and hopefully addressing some of the same issues here. So conversely, we talked about some of those commonalities that you and I recognized in Barcelona and for you beyond, but where do you see the biggest challenges in implementing core correctional skills within an agency or even an entire jurisdiction?
This is a simple and a difficult question in the same time, Joe. Thank you for that. Well, as a former manager, I would say it is firstly a matter of understanding the concepts. And I guess it is very important for the managers and for the leaders of the organization to understand what we are talking about when we are talking about evidence-based practice and these concepts. So if the leaders and if the managers are into these themes and they know they want to change something in their organization, for sure they will embrace this kind of approach of evidence-based intervention. So I guess it's about familiarity, because familiarity will support favorability for a certain concept or for a certain practice. And I really hope that during this year edition of International Training School, which will be organized in Barcelona in October, we will see more practitioners appointed by their managers to go back to their jurisdictions and to grow their probation or prison service with knowledge and with enthusiasm, because enthusiasm can make also a difference.
Yeah, 100%. So you mentioned the critical role of leaders and managers, and I see that critical role as well. What advice would you give to a prison warden or governor, as they're sometimes referred to, or the head of a probation or parole agency who is struggling to implement evidence-based practices?
I am skeptical in giving advice, I would say, but I can mention some reflection points.
Perfect.
Because evidence-based intervention shouldn't be a burden for any organization. On the contrary, if we are embracing this kind of practices, should be easier. We can make a choice, and we can choose only to do our job, or we can choose to be effective in our job. So actually, this is the decision. And if we are choosing to be effective in our job, then we can embrace what was proven by evidence that is working in our probation or prison work. So it's again about knowledge and understanding. It is a matter of mentality, and it is about culture, organizational culture. And we know from our experience that mentality and culture cannot be influenced overnight. This is a matter of years and years of practices, and building the organizational culture is not an easy thing. So it will require a strategy, a vision, and an action plan from the managers again, and from the leaders of the organization together with their staff in order to put in action some plans for embracing practices which will make a difference in the real world. And the real world will mean the lives of the people we are working with, because in the end, this is what will matter.
I agree with you that it's a full court press, if you will, or again, it's an agency-wide thing. It's not simply a matter of a manager or a leader sending probation officers to, for example, motivational interviewing training and expecting that culture to change overnight or to take hold overnight, right? It is again, an agency-wide shift that's going on. What is on the horizon for Iuliana Carbunaru? If I were to have you back on the show, or I should say when I have you back on the show in 3 years, what do you think we'll be talking about? Look into your crystal ball. I'll never forget, we had coffee in the hotel in Barcelona last year, me and you and Professor Dernescu, and we started some crazy brainstorming about where the future may take us. And I just absolutely love that infinite mindset that you embrace, because I try to do the same thing. So put on your infinite mindset thinking cap, or look into your crystal ball. Where do you think we may be crossing paths, or what do you think we might be talking about in a few years?
So in a few years, I would say I have many plans. I have many ideas, so that's why I have many plans. I hope at least some of them will be implemented. In 3 years times, I hope I will be at the end of my research for my PhD, because last year I have started my studies here in Bucharest University to observe the main influencers in Europe for the penal policy transfers. So I really hope that when you will interview me in 3 years' time, I can tell you who, why, and how is influencing the penal policy transfers in Europe. Because, as I mentioned in the beginning of our discussions, probation concepts are really new here in some countries of the region, comparing with other jurisdictions. So what I want to prove from the scientific point of view is to show who are the major players and which are the avenues of transfers for this probation concepts here in Europe. So this will be about my PhD. But also I'm a very big supporter of women empowerment and women empowerment in prison and probation, in correction. Because I know from my own experience that sometimes can be a struggle and complicated to grow and to develop as a woman in this area of practice. That's why I really like to see more women involved in leadership and in management. So I have some projects or ideas, bold ones, to put in motion in the next years. I hope this will be successful and supported. And on a short, let's say, horizon, there are some events we can talk about. Let's say, world event is the World Congress on Probation and Parole, which will be organized in Canada at the end of September. I have a presentation there about the influencers in Europe on the penal policy transfers. So I hope I will meet some of you or some of our listeners there. The next large event is our conference and General Assembly of the Confederation of European Probation, which is organized in October in Croatia. And of course, October is our month for International Training School on Core Correctional Skills, where together with CEP, with European Strategies Consulting, with the University of Barcelona and Center for Legal Studies in Barcelona, we hope to meet again and to deliver and to do some magic for our trainees, together with, again, a brilliant team of trainers like Professor Fergus McNeil, Professor Ioan Durnescu, you, Professor Joe Clark about resilience, Laura Negredo from Spain, and Ana Esquera from CEP. So we have very enthusiastic team of trainers waiting to deliver quality trainers for many colleagues in Europe and not only. And last but not least, we are hosting a workshop here in Bucharest in November about interagency cooperation. So I hope, again, we will have guests from Europe in Bucharest to talk about how we can work together with the communities, because we know probation cannot make a difference only by our own efforts. We have to join our efforts with the representatives of the community. So that's why I hope this workshop will be a success, and this will be in November. So I hope my horizon is not so overwhelming, but this is on my list until the end of the year and for the next 3 years, Joe.
Well, and that's quite the list just to get you through the end of the year, Iuliana. Holy cow, you've got a lot going on. I know I've talked to a lot of other folks who are attending the World Congress, so please seek out Iuliana and or attend her presentation there when she's presenting the World Congress. As you noted, we'll hopefully see each other in Barcelona. And for my other European listeners, take advantage of those things that Iuliana noted that will be taking place in your backyard, so to speak. Iuliana Carbunaru, thank you so much. It's great seeing you again. I look forward to when our paths cross again. And you said when you were listing your goals, some of these are bold, and I thought that's the only type of dreams we should have are the bold ones. So God bless you for that. Okay, Iuliana, until next time, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Joe.
Okay, bye-bye. As loyal listeners to the program are aware, we love bringing you international guests to share their experiences, their points of view, their subject matter expertise when it comes to implementing evidence-based practices and core correctional skills. So thank you to Iuliana Carbunaru for sharing her expertise. You heard her reference the 5th World Congress on Probation and Parole. That will be taking place in Ottawa, Canada between September 28th and October 1st of 2022. If you will be attending that great event, please make an effort to seek out and or attend the presentation that Iuliana will be giving. As promised, there is a link to that event in the show notes of this episode. Also, we reference the fantastic Confederation of European Probation project entitled A Day in the Life. If you are intrigued by what the work of your colleagues looks like in other parts of the world, I have included a link for that project as well. Iuliana also mentioned the 14th Confederation of European Probation General Assembly coming up in October of 2022. That will take place in Dubrovnik, Croatia. I have left a link for that event as well. And finally, we made reference several times to the International Training School on Core Correctional Skills, also coming up in October of 2022. There are limited seats being made available for this event, but we still have some openings. If you have the means, I encourage you to attend this incredible learning experience. Again, as noted, Professor Ioan Durnescu from the University of Bucharest is the brilliant organizer of this event, along with our friends at the Confederation of European Probation and the Center for Legal Studies in Barcelona. I am thrilled to note that in addition to such fantastic speakers as Iuliana and myself, other trainers this year include Professor Joe Clark and our very special guest this year, Professor Fergus McNeil. In fact, Professor Clark is my scheduled guest next week on the Criminologist podcast, so make sure to check out that episode when it drops. I have left a link for information and registration information for the International Training School on Core Correctional Skills as well in the episode description of this program. We will be back next week with a fresh episode. In the meantime, you may contact the show or reach out to us through our website, theparagongroup.llc.com, for training or presentations as to evidence-based practices, implementation, or, of course, the topic of desistance from crime. If you have questions or comments as to this podcast, feel free to contact the show via our email at thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. That's thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to follow us through our Facebook and Instagram pages at The Criminologist Podcast. New fun images are being added all the time to those feeds. You don't want to miss out. The Criminologist Media Group is also on Twitter. You can follow us at Crim Media Group. That's CRIM Media Group. Go ahead and give us a follow. You may also connect with me, Joseph Arvidsson, or Iuliana Carbunaru on LinkedIn, and follow both the Criminologist Podcast and the Paragon Group on our LinkedIn pages. Hey, lastly, if you've not already done so, check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Criminologist, for additional content as to the themes of this podcast. Merchandise is now available. Another great way to show your support for the program. Reach out for details. And if you believe in what we're doing on the podcast, if you're part of the movement, please spread the word. Tell a friend or a coworker or a colleague about us. Ask them to subscribe to the podcast. And of course, do so yourself if you've not already done so. And always remember, folks, there's no them, there's only us.
Indeed, Joe, we've met in Barcelona last year, and I think we created together a learning environment for colleagues around Europe. And we had a fantastic group of trainees and a brilliant lineup of trainers. You've been one of them, and we are grateful for that.
The Criminologist Podcast is a production of the Paragon Group, LLC. For speaking engagements, interviews, program design, or training opportunities, please visit us at theparagongroup.llc.com. If you enjoyed the show, you can find more content and videos on our YouTube channel, The Criminologist. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Both the Criminologist Podcast and the Criminologist channel are brought to you by the Criminologist Media Group. Be sure to give us a 5-star review, and thanks for listening.